Tyke sold cars for 30 years and Tina was a nurse. They retired with just over $400,000 and their friends thought they were making a huge mistake. 1 year later, after traveling the world and staying in 5-star hotels, they didn't have less money. They had more, over $500,000. And three numbers explain how they did it: $450, $200, and $40,000. Let's start with $450. $450 a month. That's what Tyke and Tina have paid for an entire month in an Airbnb in Vietnam for two people. Gym, pool, Wi-Fi. And this gets to one of the biggest mistakes people make when calculating how much they need to retire. They price retirement based on the life they're living while they're working. Tyke and Tina changed the life. They sold a house, they sold both cars, they got rid of almost everything they had accumulated over 30 years. And what they own now fits in suitcases. And instead of trying to finance their old lifestyle without a paycheck, they built a life they liked better that cost dramatically less. Part of their strategy is geo-arbitrage. Make your money and hold your money in dollars and spend it where those dollars buy substantially more. Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, parts of Mexico and Central America. But $450 apartments aren't even their best deal. The $40 5-star hotel. They also use hotel points strategically. They wait for IHG bonus points promotions and use those points at higher end properties in Southeast Asia. They've stayed at 4- and 5-star hotels for the equivalent of roughly $40 a night in points. And because some stays include lounge access and food, they've had months where their lodging plus much of their food costs around $1,200 total. Think about that. An American couple can easily spend $3,000 on a 1-week vacation. They can stretch roughly that amount into months of slow travel. And then when they come back to the United States, sometimes their housing cost drops to essentially zero because they house sit, stay in someone else's home, take care of the pets and the property, and don't pay rent. So here's lesson number 1. They didn't figure out how to afford their old lifestyle without jobs. They built a life they liked better that cost dramatically less. And that's a major reason something surprising happened to their $400,000. $400,000 became $500,000. When they retired, they had a little over $400,000 across all of their investment accounts. 1 year later, they've crossed $500,000. And they didn't hit a jackpot, their money stayed invested. And their spending dropped dramatically. And they still had other small income streams coming in. Tyke receives about $2,532 a month in Social Security. Tina earns around $400 a month from a small part-time job. And also their travel YouTube channel generates some income. Put that together with a low-cost lifestyle and suddenly they don't need to pull very much from their investments. This is where I want you to change the retirement question. Don't ask, can $400,000 last me the rest of my life? Ask, what does my retired life actually cost? What income continues coming in? And how much does my portfolio need to cover? It's a very different question. But Tina retired at 55, and Medicare doesn't start until 65. This is where a lot of early retirement dreams die: health insurance, which brings us to our second number, $200. The health insurance bridge. Imagine retiring at 55 and paying $1,200 a month for health insurance. That's $14,400 a year. Over a 10-year bridge to Medicare, that's going to be $144,000. That's enough to make somebody say, well, I guess I'm working till 65. But Tyke and Tina's actual coverage has been running around $200 a month. And understanding why introduces one of the most important concepts in early retirement. Your spending and your taxable income are not necessarily the same number. When your paycheck disappears, you may have much more control over where your spending money comes from. Traditional retirement accounts withdrawals can create taxable income. Qualified Roth withdrawals may not. Spending existing cash doesn't create income simply because you spend it. And that distinction can dramatically affect ACA marketplace subsidies. The lesson isn't everyone can get $200 health insurance. The lesson is don't decide you can't retire because of health insurance until you've actually modeled the bridge. So before you quit, investigate your spouse employer's plan, retiree medical benefits, COBRA, and the ACA marketplace based on your expected retirement income, not your current salary. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Once you're retired, deciding which account supplies your next dollar can affect both your taxes and potentially your health care costs, which brings us to $40,000. The 30-minute $40,000 decision. Tyke has an old IRA. and it sits about $115,000. That money went in pre-tax, which means the IRS hasn't collected its share yet. And eventually, required minimum distributions can force taxable money out. But Tyke and Tina have something now that they didn't have while they were both working: low income years. Their taxable income drops substantially after retirement. That can create a window where traditional retirement money may be converted to Roth at a lower tax rate than they would face later. That's the strategy they're evaluating. Pay the tax now during an unusually inexpensive tax year. Move the money to a Roth, then potentially receive a Roth tax treatment on future qualified growth and withdrawals. Their analysis suggests the difference over time could be at least $40,000, potentially more, up to $70,000. And the mechanics take less time than you might imagine. But here's the most important part. This is not convert everything to Roth. A conversion itself creates taxable income. Convert too much and you can push yourself into a higher tax bracket or affect other income-based calculations. So the question isn't how much can I convert, it's how much should I convert at this tax rate? Into the low tax window, usually 12%. Use it intentionally. And for a decision like this, run your specific numbers with a qualified tax professional. But none of these strategies matter if you spend another 10 years waiting to retire. And this is my favorite part of their story. The $1,500 decision. Tina was still working as a nurse, and Tyke had already retired. And they kept watching people travel through Southeast Asia and saying, someday that will be us. And then Tina did something completely backward. She bought the tickets, about $1,500, non-refundable, before the house was sold, before she even gave notice, before everything was perfectly arranged. Suddenly, retirement wasn't someday. There was a specific departure date, and everything had to work backward from it. So when do I give notice? When does the house sell? What do we keep? Where do we go? And then a terrifying life change becomes a series of specific problems that they could solve. The tickets came first. Everything else got reverse engineered from the date on the boarding pass. There's something really powerful in that. They didn't wait until they felt ready. They created a deadline and then got ready. So what was their old life costing? Then they discovered something else. Working costs more money. 2 cars, gas, work clothes, convenience purchases, and meals. And a house and everything required to maintain it. Some of those expenses disappeared when the jobs disappeared. So don't automatically take what you're spending today and assume this is what retirement will cost me. Price your retired life. For Tyke and Tina, it was radically cheaper, and they didn't experience it as a deprivation, they experienced it as freedom. Here's the playbook. So what can you actually take from their story? I'm going to boil this down to 4 moves. Number 1, price your retired life, not your working life. What disappears when your job disappears? And what would you actually spend? 2, calculate the gap. Add up the income that continues after work. Social Security, pensions, part-time income, rental income, and then subtract that from your actual retirement spending. Your portfolio doesn't necessarily need to fund your entire life. It just needs to fund the gap. 3, build the health insurance bridge before you quit. Get your actual numbers, what your spousal coverage will be, an ACA marketplace quote. Don't work an extra 10 years because you're afraid of a number you've never calculated. Number 4, identify your tax window. Know what you own in pre-tax accounts, Roth accounts, taxable investments, and cash. Then look at the years after the paycheck starts. Could those be unusually low tax years? And should you realize some income? Should you consider Roth conversions? And what does your next taxable dollar actually cost? This is where planning can be worth tens of thousands of dollars. What if the market crashes? This is the objection I hear most often. What if they retire and the market drops 30%? Their biggest protection isn't predicting the market. It's actually flexibility. They can spend a month in an inexpensive Airbnb or use points or house sit or stay longer in one place. Their Social Security and smaller income streams cover a meaningful portion of their low-cost lifestyle. A retiree locked into a $6,000 a month lifestyle has very little room to move. Someone who can live well for $1,500 to $2,000 has considerably more. Flexibility is part of their risk management. But you might be saying, but $400,000 can't last forever. Well, maybe not under someone else's spending, and that's exactly the point. Tyke and Tina didn't spend their first year draining down their $400,000. Their balance went up. Their portfolio stayed invested. Their lifestyle cost less. Other income continued coming in. So you don't hear me saying that everybody can retire on $400,000. I'm not. The lesson is the amount of money that you need cannot be separated from the life that money has to support. That's why someone can have $2 million and still be terrified to retire, while someone else can have $400,000 and discover that their math works. So let's put their first year together on the scoreboard. They retired with just over $400,000, and about a year later, they have more than $500,000. They found overseas housing for $450 a month. They've used points for high-end hotels for roughly the equivalent of $40 a night. Their health insurance coverage has been around $200 a month. And they're evaluating a Roth conversion strategy during lower income retirement years that their analysis suggests could potentially save them $40,000 up to $70,000 over time. None of this has happened because they found a magic investment. They changed the variables, which is the cost of living, taxable income, where they live, and where they pull the money from, when they pay taxes, and maybe most importantly, when they stopped waiting. Tina retired at 55, and there's an IRS rule that can be incredibly important if you're leaving your job around that age. Under the right circumstances, it can let you access your money in your workplace retirement plan before 59 and a half without the normal 10% early withdrawal penalty. It's called the Rule of 55. But there's a rollover mistake people can make after retiring that can destroy that strategy. I've broken down exactly how the Rule of 55 works and who qualifies and what you need to know before you move your 401k. That video is on your screen right now. Watch that one next.